Welcome to the Table Podcast, where we discuss issues of God and culture, brought to you by Dallas Theological Seminary.
Well, welcome. Those of you who are in line, go ahead, keep eating. We're here to feed you. And those of you who are eating, keep eating. It's okay, too. We're going to talk and let you eat at the same time. But let me welcome you to our second student dinner of the semester. Britney Underwood is here, and we're going to have a little video that's going to introduce her in a second. And we're really pleased that you could be here to hear about, is it Akola? Is that how you say?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm looking forward to this because this is kind of an out-of-the-box little thing. And the first question I'm going to ask her will make it clear how out-of-the-box it is. But let me tell you about some of the other events that are coming at the Hendricks Center. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be having a Wives of Men in Ministry event, and that is April 10th to 12th. And that retreat is at Pine Cove. So if any of you are wives of men in ministry and want to know about that, you can contact the center and we'll let you know. And then on April 23rd in Houston, we have a Faith and Work conference. That'll be held at First Baptist Church in Houston. This is our annual Faith and Work conference that we take around the country. We were in Dallas a couple of years ago. The plan is to be in Chicago with that conference next year. And then the two conferences, this will be the first time you've heard about these. Two conferences that we have sitting in front of us for next year are, we're going to have a conference called Brave New World. And Russell Moore of the Southern Baptist Convention Ethics Commission is going to be our main speaker. He's actually going to be here for 2 days. He's going to do the conference with us on Monday, and then he'll be at a chapel on Tuesday as well, a cultural engagement chapel. So we're holding on to him. He's certainly a leading voice in terms of Christian engagement with culture, and that conference will focus on cultural engagement very, very directly. And then in the spring, we're holding a conference. The Systematic Theology Department is going to hold a conference on eschatology, but it's not a prophecy conference. It is a conference on how eschatology matters for life in the present. So the working title that we have for this one, it's not necessarily going to be what we end up calling it, is Back from the Future. And so we're going to be toying with how thinking about our security in Christ, how that impacts the way we conduct our lives now. So that's kind of the lineup. And of course, you know, we do 4 cultural engagement chapels every semester. We'll have a couple of dinners as well, but we haven't lined up what we're doing with those yet. So just keep your eyes and ears open for what the center is doing. So with that as kind of our introduction, we actually have a video that we're going to use to introduce the evening. And so we can show that now, and that will get you oriented to what we're doing. Oops.
Boarding school. The first week that I was in Uganda, a pastor noticed my discomfort. I had never been out of my comfort zone. I had never been in a developing country, and he told me that he wanted me to meet a woman, Ugandan woman, that he thought would inspire me. So he led me up the hill to a small shack on the outskirts of Uganda's capital city, Kampala, and introduced me to a woman named Sarah. And Sarah was not but 3 years older than I was. She basically devoted her entire life to caring for street kids who had come through her village. She was an orphan herself. She didn't have the money to provide for them, but she could offer them shelter. So she opened up her home. It just changed my entire perspective, and I thought maybe there's something I can do to help. I partnered with Sarah to build an orphanage home for the 24 kids that were sleeping on her floor. Initially, we thought we would just build a small building so the kids could have a home, and in the next year, it turned into an orphanage home for 180 kids. He started the Akola Project to empower women to uplift the lives of their families and communities through economic development. So we work with community leaders to identify women who are the most marginalized in their communities, who have the most dependents and the least support. And then we go out and build the infrastructure in these rural villages. We drill clean water wells, we build vocational training centers, and then we spend 5 to 6 years training these women to make the beautiful products we sell here at the Akola Project.
People see Britney's enthusiasm and want to be involved because of her. She has just this contagious love for life and an undying passion for these women and children. Over the past 10 years, thousands of lives have been touched by her passion and her compassion.
This year we've been working with Rosalind and the Dallas Women's Foundation to expand our model to Dallas to offer an economic alternative to women who've been trafficked. Here at Akola, we're trying to create a product line that is both made by but also fully benefits marginalized women in war-torn regions in northern Uganda, women in eastern Uganda who've experienced the HIV/AIDS epidemic, and women here in Dallas who've been sexually trafficked. For other young leaders who are facing the challenges of building an organization, my advice would be faith, tenacity, perseverance, and dedication. It's these qualities that will set you apart and allow you to achieve the vision and dreams you have for other women. I'm Britney.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You're Britney Underwood. Well, Britney, a pleasure to have you with us. And what's a nice girl from Atlanta living in Dallas and working in Uganda?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did not set out to do any of this. I actually had just started really growing in my faith in college, and I went to this forum in DC, and they talked about, a great way to grow in your faith is to pick a couple friends and just learn how to love each other for the summer and grow in community. And I took that seriously, and 2 friends of mine from high school, we just decided to pick a place in the world and spend the summer there and really just focus on our friendships. And we ended up in Uganda because one of my friends, her father was the executive director of World Harvest Ministry, and they had a boarding school that needed teachers for the summer. And so I honestly didn't know where Uganda was on the map. I just signed up, and next thing I knew, we were in a rural village in East Africa, and that's where it all began.
Now, what year was this?
This was 2004.
Okay, so you went, and as the video indicated, you were deeply impacted by the experience. How long did it take from that to what you ended up doing in Uganda?
Yeah, I actually had a really terrible attitude. I was really sick from the very beginning. I was really uncomfortable. I'd never witnessed extreme poverty in the way that I saw it in Uganda. And actually about 2 weeks in, and I mentioned this in the video, but we were kind of learning about the community, and a local pastor could tell that I wasn't totally engaged, and I think he just wanted to inspire me. So he said, I want you to meet a woman who just has a really powerful story. She's a member of our community, and I think her story will inspire you. And said, why not? And this woman changed really the course of my life. She just had trusted God with the lives of 24 street children, had no way to provide for them, but gave everything she had so they could live. And I thought 2 things. One, here I am, someone who's been given a lot. I haven't given anything for anyone else to live, and she's sharing her daily bread and going hungry for others. And then also here's someone who can trust God for the lives of 24 street kids. I can barely do that for myself. And so that moment, kind of a seed was planted, and that grew for the rest of the summer. And I actually went to study abroad after that in Italy, which is quite a shift, at SMU, and I broke my leg. There's this crazy story. I ended up back in Atlanta with really nothing to do except for to think about this woman, Sarah, the kid sleeping on her floor. So it really started as just a small effort. I thought I would just send a couple $100 over, and they could buy some beans, and she could send her kids to school. And that grew into this idea of building a building for the kids that slept on her floor. And next thing I knew, they had a sponsorship arm had come in, and they needed a really big building. And so somehow in the span of, from my sophomore year of college to my senior year of college, I somehow found myself raising, we raised close to $1 million for a 3-story orphanage with the capacity to house 200 children in Sarah's village, and that's when I moved to Uganda.
Oh, wow. Well, let's go through that part of the story, because it's an interesting part of the story. So you're raising millions of dollars as a college student for this effort. How in the world did that happen?
Well, I was lucky I was in Dallas. That helped. I just had friends, actually through Young Life. I was a Young Life leader for Highland Park High School, and just met a lot of great people in our city, and a lot of great...
on the North Dallas board.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're amazing, and a lot of great
Yep.
families. And they heard what I was doing and said, we'd love to help you through a fundraiser. I did that here, through one in Atlanta. Had this short promotional video. I was a journalism major at SMU. I edited this 9-minute video that kind of told Sarah's story and the kids' stories. And the video got out, and checks came in the mail from people we had never met. We had a great board. They helped us raise a lot of the money. So soon, I was graduating from SMU, and I thought, I've got to move over there to make sure this building actually happens. All these people gave us money. I guess I have to go. And I had 3 friends who put their post-college jobs on hold and moved over there and helped me get that off the ground over the next several years.
So how long were you in Uganda to move over there to the building?
So we moved over there late 2006, and I was back and forth, but there for the majority of the time until 2010 when I went to Fuller.
Okay, so four full years in Africa?
Yeah, close to 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, so I guess the next question is, you're married now and have a child, so how does that come into the mix?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I actually, my husband, there's this crazy story, how God just kind of takes care of you through all this. I thought, great, I spent most of my 20s in an East African village. I'm never going to get married, and that's something I'm just surrendering to the Lord. And I met my husband actually at my first fundraiser here in Dallas. His family was one of our supporters, and he was a couple years older than I was at the time. And we ended up reconnecting when I finished my degree at Fuller. And we got married, and I moved back to Dallas in Akola, which I'll talk about how the orphanage kind of turned into a social business. But after that, I started spending, every 3 months I would go to Uganda and told him, I have a house here. He was like, what? We were engaged, and I built this house out of local materials in the Nile near where the women work. And so he knew early on this is part of what our family's doing, and he was bought into that. And we have really, we have a 9-month-old, so it's hard to take him at this time, but I still try to go once every 6 months. When he was 6 months old, I went for 10 days, and it's hard to leave him. But we hope it's, something that these women are part of my life. My husband and I got married in one of the villages we work in. All of the women were there, and that I've worked with over the years. And I just, the hope is our families fully integrated in what we do. So I think that's how it works.
That's cool. So you go every 3 months. What happens when you go over there? What do you end up doing when you're over there?
Yeah. So I used to do everything. So there was only 4 of us, and so I had to do everything. We really built this from the ground up, first with the orphanage and then with Akola. And now, and then we went through a stage where I'd have to fly over there every time there was a fire, which was all the time. We were putting out fires. And then we got to the place around 2013 where we had been operating for, 7 years and had a great staff. Our COO in Uganda came over. We stole her from Jane Goodall, and she was running all of her women's empowerment programs. And she's, a better leader than I am, knows more than I do about economic development, and totally trust her. So now she runs our staff of 30 in Uganda, and I just go there because I miss the women. So I'm kind of irrelevant at this point, but I just like to be there.
Now let's talk about the transition from the orphanage to the company. And why don't you explain how the company itself works? And I'm assuming Akola means something. Am I right about that? Okay. So what does Akola mean?
Akola means she works.
Okay.
So we spent several years building this huge orphanage, but we were working with a construction company, so we're essentially just paying construction payments. So we started doing a lot of other stuff during that time. We had someone give us a pretty large grant to drill clean water wells across the country. So we thought, we're just paying this contractor, we might as well do other things. So we started drilling these clean water wells around Uganda, and it was there, we go into all these different villages, and it was the same story. There's so many women like Sarah who had 20 street kids sleeping on their floor, no way to provide for them. And we just started to realize there's got to be a more sustainable way to address the orphan crisis and be able to provide for disadvantaged children. You can't just build $60 million orphanage structures around the country. I mean, that's not going to solve the problem, and it's not sustainable, and it's expensive, and there's a lot of issues with that model, period. I mean, it's a really antiquated model that we don't use here for a reason. So we just learned a lot along the way, and once we finished the building, we thought, I wonder if there's a better way to do this. And so we started the Akola Project in 2007 with the intention of working with other women like Sarah, who had street kids, an average of 10 kids was kind of our metric, living in their home, no way to provide for them, no way to earn income. Kids weren't in school, weren't getting proper nutrition. And we thought, if we could just help build capacity for these women, they have the heart, they're already taking care of these kids, they just need the money to send them to school and some basic training, and and they should be able to handle this. These kids don't have to go to an orphanage home. And so we started Akola for that purpose, with 15 women working under a mango tree. And we said, well, in order for the women to make money, we've got to create some kind of business or product. And we looked at a lot of local programs that we could do, and these women are cut off from the global economy. These women that we work with are in very rural villages, barely have roads, that are functioning. Women in northern Uganda who've survived the 20-year war up there and conflict. And we thought, I think, we need to create a product, something that we could market and sell, that we know can fund these women so they can take care of their kids. And so we picked jewelry, honestly, because it was easy to ship. That was like our first, we're like, this is easy, it's small. Like, I went to SMU, so I know a lot of people who have good fashion sense, and we had a lot of friends who are designers and thought that would be something we could build. And so we kind of in 2007, 2008 set out to build this business to support the women.
Now, I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to ask this question. How did you went from jewelry, and how exactly does this work? In other words, what's the model that you're using to sustain these women?
Yeah, so we developed it. We kind of started grassroots trial and error, figuring out what worked, what didn't. We quickly realized we actually have to build the infrastructure for economic opportunity, because we work in villages where there's not a tin roof. There's nowhere for women to work. And it's, once the business starts growing, it's not sustainable for them to work under a mango tree. And it doesn't give them a lot of dignity. And so we started building centers, training centers around the country. And then the next thing we do is, once we've built a center, and we accompany that with clean water wells, really building the infrastructure that they need for economic opportunity. And once we do that, we train women who are not artisans, women with no educational, vocational background, to make the products that we sell in the global marketplace. We design them. We create high fashion products. And part of that is it can't be a charity purchase. We're working with 500 women whose livelihood depends on our ability to sell this product. And so we learned pretty early on to do a good job in that area. So we started retailing our product around the U.S. We've been sold in 450 stores around the country, to one department store, potentially another specialty store this fall, and large accounts with Tom's and Madhavani, and been able to, offer the women dependable employment because the product sold well. So once the women have dependable employment, they're able to provide for the 10 kids in their home, and we were able to set a metric where they made enough money to not only send the women who are working full-time all of their kids to school, provide for their health care, rebuild their homes, but also invest in local businesses in their communities. Because once these women realize, gosh, we're capable, they have dignity, they have opportunity, they want to do more. And so instead of using microloans for them to start small businesses, we just train them to save the money, a portion of the money they would earn through us, to invest in these businesses, and kind of walked alongside of them and launched a series of classes in finance and business, and to really help them be successful. And we believe that really helps drive sustainability for generations to come, whether we're there for 5 years, 10 years, 1 year. They're investing that money in long-term solutions for their community.
Now, some people might not know what a microloan is. So will you explain what that is?
Yeah, so microloan is just a small loan to normally a disadvantaged population. And we really serve women who are kind of a rung below candidates for microfinance. Like, our women would not know to get a loan. They wouldn't have the confidence to do it. They wouldn't have, they really wouldn't have the confidence. And so after going through Akola's program, these women have become candidates for loans. We have women who have worked with us for 7 years who've run for local office. And again, these are women who could barely look you in the eyes when we first started working with them. They were so severely marginalized. And now, their kids are in school, their communities are functioning, they're kind of infusing capital into a traditional barter economy. So now, the local brick maker who never got paid for his bricks gets money. So he sends his kids to school. So we've seen entire communities, we work in 9 of them, just totally transformed this model. It's been really exciting.
Now, some social questions. The orphans, where do they come from? Is this because of war or a disease, combination of the above? Where? And then are the women? I take it they're widows themselves in many cases, or something like that.
Yeah. So Uganda's a polygamous country. So there's a lot of women who are left with kids with no help all over, especially in rural communities where men generally move to the city to get a job. So you don't see that many men in these communities. People are always asked, like, do the men get mad? Where are they? There's not a lot of them around. And the ones that are there are very supportive. And we also provide opportunity for them through building our centers. We always employ local men, use local labor, and that's a way that they get involved in these projects and earn an income. But yeah, these are women who, who've been through war, 20 years. We have women whose children were abducted by the LRA and forced into sexual slavery, and some forced into becoming child soldiers. We have women whose, majority of their family members have died of HIV/AIDS, and they're survivors of that. And a lot of times the orphans come from the community, and that's why orphanages don't make that much sense, because in these communities, everyone knows who the orphan kids are. There's not like a random kid that comes along and, these are very interconnected communities. And generally the orphan kids come from, the father leaves, the mom generally contracts HIV/AIDS. A fourth of the women we work with are tested positive. I would guess probably half of them are. She passes away. She's got 4 kids. They go to her sister. Something happens to her sister. Her sister has 3 kids too. The grandmother takes them, and next thing you know, there's 10 dependents. So really how it's worked out for the women we work with, the average is 10 dependents, 7 children, and 2 adult dependents. All of them fully rely on the mother to care for them, and she has no way to provide.
Wow, what a story. You talked about child soldiering. People don't know what that is either. Why don't you explain what a child soldier is?
Yeah, so there's a 20-year conflict, 25-year conflict in northern Uganda where, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Lord's Resistance Army. I know Invisible Children made a lot of that kind of public, but child soldiers is when there's an internal conflict or external conflict in the country, and the warlords come in, and it's the most horrific things, hearing these stories from the ground and in our project in northern Uganda. But they would come in and burn down a village, kill parents in front of their children. They'd tie the children up, make them watch. Human mutilation to a degree that is just, it's hard to even talk about. But the children would watch that and know they had nowhere to go back to. So they'd take them, they would become part of this army. They'd give them guns and drugs and God knows what else. And next thing you know, the child had become sort of a mercenary. And so, that war is essentially over. It's disbanded. But the remnants of it are, it's disastrous.
And the age of these children, what might be? Now
they're like, on average, probably 15. We work with a lot of the mothers of child soldiers. But and some never came back. Some of their kids never came back, and some did, and they were lucky to escape with their lives. And we work in the Pade district in Pajule, which is one of the hardest hit areas in the war, and they're still rebuilding. They were living in internally displaced camps because the government tried to protect them. The camps would get attacked, which it wasn't a very safe place for them, and then once the conflict, they started negotiating kind of peace treaties in 2007. It's been kind of rocky since then, but they moved people to satellite camps, and now they're kind of moving back to their ancestral homes. So in our project in northern Uganda, we really focus on that kind of that rebuilding effort, and by helping the women generate income and learn these kind of soft and hard skills, and we're hoping they'll be able to get back on their feet.
That's quite a story. Now, we've got microphones set up so that you all can ask questions as I continue to work with this. So where are you today in terms of the, how many, you said you're in 9 different areas? Is that, did I hear
9
that?
different communities.
9 different communities. And the size of these communities, what's the average size of these villages? Can you say? It
depends. I mean, our Bwala village, we work with close to 100 women in that village, and Chibibi's 30, 40 women. Or Nabokos, I mean, all these tiny little villages along the Nile, and then in northern Uganda. And then we also expanded to Dallas. So we work with women here who've been formerly incarcerated or sexually trafficked, and they work in our distribution center, and we teach them kind of hard skills to help them get back on their feet, help them get a job when their criminal history normally wouldn't allow for that. And we also have production. So we have women in West Dallas who actually string the beads on the necklace that are made in Uganda and for sale here. And a big thing about sort of our model is we run everything through a nonprofit framework. So our organizational structure is a nonprofit with a mission-related enterprise, same as Goodwill. That's probably another equivalent to our, but that means 100% of our profits are reinvested in our social mission. So when you buy an Akola necklace, not only is it every bead on the necklace empowering women, the assembly empowers and employs women, the distribution empowers and employs women, but also all the money goes back to that mission. So it's a really high impact project.
Okay, now this is a fun question to ask, and that is, take us through the start to the finish of a piece of jewelry. Where does it begin, and how does it end, and what is it that the women over there are doing, and what is it the women over here are doing, that kind of thing.
So I'll use an example. One of our department store orders last year, how it was produced is we had women in 6 villages hand rolling paper beads, and once we sold them the paper, they rolled the beads, we buy them back, and that's kind of our part-time workers. They kind of make the core components of the necklace. We also have women who hand cut Anakoli cow horn, among many other things. So they kind of make the components of the necklaces, and that money goes back to paying school fees for their kids. And then it's assembled by either our assembly team, which is our full-time workers in Uganda, based in Jinja in eastern Uganda, or the women here in West Dallas. It's kind of interchangeable. Some stuff is produced there, some's here, even in the same order. And then it's distributed by women who've been referred to us by New Friends, New Life, who have been formerly incarcerated, sexually trafficked, trying to get back on their feet. And that's
a local organization.
And they send us women who are ready to work, who've been fully rehabilitated from their program. Our West Dallas women are also referred to us by 9 other nonprofits in our city who've worked with women and want them to kind of get back on their feet. And we're also partnering with Buckner, who's doing the case management for all of our women. So we really, here in Dallas, just focus on the training and employment, whereas in Uganda, we do a whole suite of programs around their employment called Akola Academy. So this business classes, wellness, just series of classes to help their development. But here we're able to rely on partners for that.
So relative size, how many women are you working with in Uganda, and how many women are employed here? Yeah,
so around 450 women in Uganda. And here we just started our Dallas pilot last year with 15 women, and I think we're going to be at 30 in the next couple weeks, hopefully. And we're hoping to grow to 100 in the next 2 years. So we just partnered with United Way here in Dallas, and they're helping us reach capacity here.
So you're rolling and going, huh?
Yeah, it's busy.
And you become a mom in the meantime?
Yes, I have a 9-month-old.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it's a busy, and I teach a course on social innovation at SMU. So I'm teaching, working, and have a 9-month-old, which has been an exciting balancing act.
Yeah. We'll talk about the counseling part of this later. So wrap it up for us. What do you feel like you've learned in going through this experience? As you said, this isn't at all what you thought when you took that initial trip to Uganda. This wasn't on the this wasn't in the plans.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And so, what would you regard as some of the turning points that you saw, that you see? I mean, besides obviously the initial experience.
Yeah. After working on the ground, sort of building what Akola is today, those first 5 years, I mean, we were burned so bad. I mean, we were cheated, we were lied to, we were threatened, we made every mistake in the book. And I got to the point where I was so burned out and I was so tired and just thinking like, Lord, what am I even doing? We've probably done more harm than help in a lot of ways. And, you know, I'm sick, I'm tired, my friends are getting married, and I'm in the middle of nowhere, Uganda, and just like really became disillusioned. And I actually had a former professor of mine at SMU who's on our board who said, I think you need to take a break to kind of get, retool and look at your model and take a step back and work on your heart and, kind of figure out why you're doing this. And that's when I went to Fuller Seminary in Pasadena and did my master's in intercultural studies, international development. Studied under Bryant Myers, who I really respect, kind of his development theories and theology. And it was at that time that I actually, my best work came from that. We were able to take, kind of just by taking a pause, all of the good things and bad things that we had done and experienced over that kind of first 5 years I was in Uganda in my early 20s, able to form a real model out of that. A model for social business is actually crazy. It's in a McGraw-Hill textbook now, which is nuts. But I formed it there. And part of that was taking a step back and kind of learning more about international development, studying it after I had experienced it, and taking, again, my experience from the ground and really, thinking it through, dissecting it, figuring out, what can we do better? How can we serve these people better? But another piece was my heart. Why am I doing this? Where is God in the midst of suffering? There's a lot of things that I wrestled with coming out of that. And I was able to resolve a lot of that just by taking a step back for 2 years at Fuller. And once I finished my degree there and came back here to Dallas, that's when Akola really took off in 2013. So I think one of the best lessons in this is just having the courage to take a pause sometimes, and the courage to fail. And I mean, I really look at the building that we did, the orphanage structure. I'm glad we did it. I know God was in it, but it's not a great model. And in a lot of ways, it was a failure in my mind, at least from a development perspective and how it's serving those children. It's not doing that very well. And we have no control over it. We didn't even put the title in our name because we didn't know better at the time. And so, I mean, there was a lot of ways we failed. And I think I had a mentor right before I went to Fuller who said to me, I said, why? I'm just leaving. I don't even know why we came, or I'm just confused about the whole thing. And I feel like, again, we've hurt more than helped. And I said, I'm out of here. And he said, that's a problem with people in your generation. Things get hard and you bail and you go to something else. He goes, I really challenge you. Everyone who comes here, it doesn't matter if they have a PhD in international development, you're going to fail at first. Probably the first 5 years you're here, you're going to do a lot of harm. But if you can take the lessons that you learned from that, then the next 50 years, you'll really be able to help. And he said, I challenge you to commit to this country. And I took that pause, and I did. And now 12 years later, I mean, we're really paving the way for social businesses and have hit a scale that most organizations haven't, and have been able to show that you can do that through a nonprofit framework where all of it goes back, and you can do that with faith and integrity. And it's been an incredible journey, but I could have very easily given up, every year, along the way until the past couple of years when things really took off. And I guess some really good advice is take a pause when you need to pause, have the courage to fail and to face that, and just learn from, your experience and make it better.
Now, maybe a question is, has the church itself or churches themselves played any role in this? What's been their part of the story?
So the women we work with in Uganda are predominantly Christians. We work in, it's sort of animist Christianity. There's a lot of things mixed in on a village folk level. But yeah, the women we work with are mainly Christian. And so we've been able to I've learned a lot from them in my faith, and we've been able to walk alongside of them and kind of share our stories and faith. And that's been sort of the spiritual part of this journey. We've had churches all along the way partner with us. We have some of the bigger churches in Dallas that support us and have from the very beginning. And but we also have organizations like United Way that are not faith-based supporting us. And that's always been important to us in the very beginning, is that we wanted everyone to be a part of this journey. And my faith has informed this whole process. And I mean, everything that I do. And the women's faith has transformed my life. They've taught me more than I could ever give to them. But we wanted to create a company that anyone could be a part of it. And that's been really beneficial. And we've had some people challenge us and say, well, why aren't you a faith-based organization? You say it's coming from that. And what we say is, I mean, God's working in every part of this, every day, through our staff, through the women, in ways that are hard for me to even describe. And so we haven't had to necessarily have like a ministry component to make it what we feel like is honoring to God.
Now, we may have some people out here who are thinking about what they are thinking about the possibilities of doing something like this. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. If you're doing a social enterprise, your product really matters. You cannot create a charity purchase that doesn't go a long way. People buy a little bit of it, but it'll never grow to scale. And to really serve people well through a social business or social enterprise, you have to run the business well, and you need a great product. And you can't, you can't do it without that. So I think from that angle, I would say really work on your product and on your business model, and tap into things like social finance, impact investing, all of these great new philanthropic tools that are brand new in our generation, help fund these kind of ventures in ways that were never possible before. Advice interpersonally, again, don't be afraid to fail, and you learn from that. And as long as you take those lessons, you can create something really beautiful out of your experience. And that would be sort of the interpersonal piece. And also just realizing like God has a different plan for everyone's life. I wasn't someone who grew up and like wanted to change the world or something. I just wanted to be faithful. And I took step by step, small steps of faith that have led to something really big, but that was never the intention. And it would have been okay if it didn't grow to this scale. And we did, the orphanage structure, learned from that, and God called me just to be a mom. Like that would have been just as beautiful as what Akola has become. And so I think also a lot of people say, well, I want to do, that's so cool, I want to do this. And that's great. And I think it's great to set out to do it. But I think also just to look at your life and look right in front of you. Like, what has God put in front of you? Who has he put in front of you? And being faithful to that. And I think that's when big things happen as they grow out of that.
Now, as you were growing this business, how much role did foundations play in helping you out? You mentioned fundraisers, but was there foundational support as well?
Some family foundations in the beginning. I mean, almost like any venture. In the very beginning, they were friends of our family, or friends through Young Life, or individual donors who just invested in me and in this idea. I mean, they hoped that it would work out, but they trusted our heart and vision for it, and that's all they really had in a small video. But as we've grown, we mainly get our support through foundations now. And I think that that's something you kind of earn over time. Once your organization gets to a point where you have a proven impact model and theory of change, and you're able to measure it, and you have a track record, that's when foundation money is accessible and important.
So that's basically how you're generating your ability to sustain the operation.
Through foundations, but we also do a lot of impact investing. So I don't know if many of you are familiar with kind of these new tools with social finance, but there's this sort of big bang in the philanthropic world where capital markets, which didn't normally interact with giving, there's sort of this convergence where foundations now are willing to, out of their endowment fund, give impact investments in the form of low interest loans. And if you're a for-profit social impact company, they'll do equity investments. And that's where we've been able to get the real funding to scale. So if we have a purchase order for 10,000 units, I mean, that costs a lot to make.
Right.
We got a $500,000 impact investment last year for this department store order. We're able to, put that into our product, and we end up making 5 times that amount of money for our programs and the women, but would never have been able to do it without that. And that was basically structured as a low interest loan with a 5% return from a foundation, and gave us the money we needed to scale. So that's actually been the greatest tool that we've been able to use to grow.
And are those grants renewable? I mean, have you established a track record with certain people who are giving you now on a kind of an annual basis because they know what you're about?
Absolutely, yeah. Our grants we have a great group of people, and we've been able to recently now with United Way and Dallas Women's Foundation kind of access sort of the top tier of kind of philanthropic support that's very hard to get, very competitive. And I think once you hit that level, just doors open. So we're in a good place for raising money, but also, again, trying to do a lot of our resource strategy is through impact investing.
Interesting. Okay, Casey, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is that through this journey of creating Akola, how has that both shaped and then changed the way that you view one's work or occupation as part of their larger vocation, their calling?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's totally intertwined. And I think with what I do, people always ask, they're like, gosh, you work so much. But I'm like, I don't feel like it's work. This is my passion. This is what I love to do. And it's all intertwined. And so if I'm working on a Saturday, it doesn't feel like, oh gosh, I'm working on a Saturday. I would rather do this than most other things, minus being with my family. And that's also where the balance becomes hard, because you're like, my work and my vocation and my calling and my faith, everything is tied together. And so it's really easy to kind of work all the time because it's just your life. But I also think that's such a gift, because I think that's how it's supposed to be. I mean, if we look at different biblical references or what it means to really live out our vocation and our calling, it's discovering what we were created for and living that out. And I feel like I've used every gift I've been given by God in this work, every talent. I've just pushed it as far as I can. I've exhausted every part of myself in this, and feel like not only does my life have meaning, but the way I was designed, the way God made me, is being fully used. And that's so rewarding. And honestly, there's nothing better than that. The only challenge is, again, I'm also designed to be a mom to my little 9-month-old. So there's that almost, it's not competing, but, and I hope as he gets older, that becomes more integrated and he becomes a part of what we do. I mean, he goes down to Akola. We have a store on Main Street. Please come see us near Pecan Lodge. And, he'll come down there and get passed around by every staff member, all the women. Like, he's kind of like the community kid. And I love that. And so in some ways, too, that balance is just the integration of all of your passions. And again, God's in all of that.
Now, obviously, your husband, can I say, signed on for the ride?
Y'all can pray for him. he bears the biggest burden.
What was that like? I mean, because that's a huge adjustment for him. Because if you weren't expecting what took place, he certainly didn't coming in. So
yeah, and we got married in 2012, right before everything. I mean, this had been going for a long time, but it really took off like right after that. So he was not signing up for like a life of me traveling all the time and working all the time, and he does that too. So I mean, we've had to work through that in our marriage, and he's really supportive, and he knows and knew from the beginning. Again, we met at my first fundraiser. He knows I'm called to this, and he doesn't challenge that, which is great. But yeah, I mean, how that plays out on a day-to-day basis, it's really hard, and we've had to have a lot of tough conversations about what happens when we both have to travel. I mean, his job funds our family. I don't make tons of money from Akola. So, I mean, there's that. And, but then, mine's making a difference in a lot of people's lives. So then there's that, and so today is a great example. I normally only work till 2:00 on Tuesdays. So I have a nanny that comes till 2, and then I'll take Lath in the afternoon and still try to get some work done. But today I had a meeting with Neiman Marcus about launching one of our collections through them. And then we had this. So my cousin picked him up from the babysitter. My mother-in-law got him from my cousin, and Baxter, my husband, is picking him up from my mother-in-law at 6:45, and then he's going to bed. So days are just like that. And, Baxter's been really patient, but yeah, that isn't easy. And he bears a lot of the cost, probably the majority of the cost of what I do. Financially, I I'm not able to contribute much, and yet I work all the time. Spiritually, I'm pulled in so many directions, and emotionally, he doesn't get that much. And so that's been something, he's a great man to have signed up for that.
Now, how often do you travel now to Africa, and how have your trips to Africa changed versus when you started?
Yeah, so I was going once every couple months, and now I'm trying to go once every 6 months, just with my son, and go for a 10-day period. My mom will come here and watch my son, and my husband will help with that a lot. And the trips now are more to encourage our staff, to encourage the women, to help them know that I care about them and we care about them over here. And that's really it. We have an amazing team on the ground. So yeah, in the beginning I was doing everything. In the middle, I was putting out every time there was a fire, I had to fly to Uganda and solve it, figure it out. There was no one else to do it. And now I have a team that does that. So I get to really be, an innovator and an encourager. So I meet with our team and we think about, like, what could this be in 3 years and 5 years? And we get to dream together, and I get to just be a champion of them, and that's really fun.
And your core team is how large?
30 in Uganda and 15 here.
Okay. And I'll go ahead and let you go ahead and ask your question.
You mentioned in the beginning that the community had a role in selecting the women. And my question would be, if you wanted to put the 10th village, how would you start, and what are the way to start?
Yeah, so actually we're sort of changing our strategy, and this happened when we expanded to Dallas. When we thought about, growing our program here, we thought, there's amazing nonprofits and ministries in our city that have been working with marginalized women for, sometimes 100 years. Why would we reinvent the wheel? In Uganda, there's not a lot of organizations in the village we work in that are willing to kind of go into those areas. So we kind of have to do everything. But here, the need was really, the training and the job opportunities for women who, because of their history, can't get a job. And for the nonprofits, their big dilemma here was, great, we've just rehabilitated this group of women, but they're going to go back into prostitution, back into poverty, back into jail because they don't have an economic alternative. And so we worked with Serve West Dallas, who's an amazing organization, collective impact organization that brings all of the ministries in West Dallas together. And we said, hey, we can offer 45 women jobs. And they worked with 9 nonprofits who sent us women from their program who were ready to work, women who were ready to get back on their feet. And so we did that. And then for the women in our distribution center, we partner with New Friends, New Life, who sends us women for a 3-month internship period and then a 1-year fellowship. And then we hire them full time. And a lot of times it's the first job they've ever had after a lifetime of being incarcerated over and over and over again. So it's a great opportunity for them. And that's worked so well for us. We thought, we've been able to offer something that these nonprofits can't, and that's getting these women back on their feet from their rehabilitation program. And in Uganda and anywhere we go in the future, it's kind of the same thing. There are other organizations now that we can partner with, like Buckner, who are already providing those services, so we can focus on what we're really great at and what other people can't offer, which is the training and employment. So if we ever go to another village, we're looking at Kenya as sort of the next place we'd grow in. We would do it alongside a partner like Buckner, where they would do all of the holistic development, even the financial training, business training, and we would go in and do the basic product training and employment. So that's a great question. Yeah.
Well, our time has slipped from us very, very quickly, Britney, but I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us your story. And it's a great story. It's a story of profound faith, in which someone senses a need and basically says, okay, God, stretch me.
Yeah.
And the faithfulness comes through, the heart comes through, the ministry impact comes through, and we'll continue to pray for Akola and what's going on. Let me close this in a word of prayer.
Thank you.
Father, we do thank you for just the beauty of a story of simple, energetic, committed, faithful faith. And we lift up Britney, and we lift up Akola, and we just pray for these women, both here and in Uganda, and pray for the success of the ministry. And we ask that you would continue to lead and guide the team that oversees this, and that you would continue to open doors, and that opportunity would continue to exist to help people not only rediscover who they are and rebuild their lives, but also come to appreciate what capabilities you give people who sometimes are told that they don't matter at all. So we thank you for these many gifts that you give us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the Table Podcast. For more podcasts like this one, visit dts.edu/the table. Dallas Theological Seminary. Teach truth, love well.